Started. Pendulum Inc. Welcome back to Criminology in Hip Hop, taught by the ever intelligent griot, Professor Maria Jackson. I will allow him to take precedent and take over from here, and I'll see you guys at 8:55.
Oh, absolutely. Beautiful. Appreciate that, Dean Facts. Beautiful folks. Welcome. How is everybody feeling today? Hopefully we're doing well. Hopefully I can get us to put those long lives up. Long living hip hop, absolutely, as it is. I'm excited today. I'm looking at my Zoom and wonder why my Zoom is looking funny for me today. I'm going to ignore that in just a second. I think once I get it on my full screen, it'll look like I need it to look. Yeah, and there we go. So just want to get a check-in with everybody and just kind of offer this caveat. I enjoyed last class immensely. And I pride myself on being a forever learner, being inquisitive, and to always be a scholar. And so that means that we learn from the experiences we had. And so what I want to do this evening is I want to spend less time just with the sit and get. I want to spend less time with just this incredibly structured scroll of ideas that we run through and we have little time to chat about. I think we've had enough time together as a class, as a cohort, that I think it's absolutely necessary to allow some space for us to be able to really get it in and share some things. Dean Facts, let me check and see. Do you have me co-hosting? I do see it. Good. All right, my bad. All right, so I want to start this class just a little bit of interesting energy. So this class is Purple Hair, the value of the snitch and the mob we idolize. Now, of course, that line references someone who is rather popular musically. I cannot explain how, but to each their own. And more so to the way that Rick Ross chose to reference him when he found himself getting out of prison. But before we jump into that, I want to take 3 minutes to listen and then a little bit of time to pick your brain on one of our most engaging and unexpected political commentators, and that would be none other than Cameron Giles, aka Cameron, from when he spent a little time speaking to CBS. The sound should be shared. If it does not, please someone let me know before we get too far into it, but I think I got this right. Okay, I don't know why that happened. Pardon me, let's fix that. I think I stopped my sharing. Did I stop my sharing? Did I stop my sharing? It's still sharing?
No, we can still see it, brother.
Okay, I don't know what happened then. Let's go here.
Hi, I'm Katie Couric. Welcome to Eye to Eye. Rapper Cameron has made millions from his lyrics about life in the mean streets of Harlem. And a big part of his hip hop culture is keeping your mouth shut when the cops come around. He told CNN's Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes why he'd rather be silent than a snitch.
You were shot in both arms.
Yes.
And you have nerve damage in one of them.
Yes.
Does it still hurt?
Oh yeah, definitely. Feels like my hand is numb. It's in an ice box all day.
If you had seen who shot you, would you have told police?
No.
Why?
Because the type of business I'm in, it would definitely hurt my business. And the way that I was raised, I just don't do that. I was raised differently, not to tell.
A lot of people, though, hearing that are going to say that that's not a good thing.
The people that say it's not a good thing are most likely the people that don't buy my records. You know what I'm saying? The people that buy my records kind of understand where I'm coming from. I have a fan base of 500,000 people, which means every time my album comes out, I sell 500,000 on a good day, on a bad day. On a great day, I sell 2 million records. So basically, the people who would say that that isn't a good thing, I don't think those are the same people that buy my album. The people that buy my music will understand why I'm saying what I'm saying.
So for you, it's really about business.
It's about business, but it's still also a code of ethics. Like I said, I'm raised from where we wasn't raised to tell. You wasn't brought up to say, hey, this guy did that. This guy did that. It's kind of like, not saying go do something bad to the person who did something to you, but it's kind of policing your own community.
If there is a serial killer living next door to you, though, and you know that person is, killing people, would you be a snitch if you called police and told them?
If I knew the serial killer was living next door to me,
Yeah.
no, I wouldn't call and tell anybody on them, but I'll probably move. Like, I'm not going to be around because I don't need to be living around serial killers, but I'm not going to call and be like, put the signs up like, yo, the serial killer's in 4E.
It's not your responsibility.
Exactly.
Is there any situation where you think it's okay to talk to the police?
Yeah, definitely. Say hello, how you feel, everything all right, period.
Do you worry about the message that a kid listening to your music is getting?
Oh, no, I wouldn't, because basically it's parental advisory on all music. If you're not 18, you have a parental advisory on there, and parents, they don't sell it to you if you're not over 18 without it. So if you let your child pick the music up, that's more responsibility of a parent.
But the truth is, it's not really your concern, the ramifications of this. I mean, that if no one comes forward, the murder rates, no one will get convicted of crimes, or fewer murderers will get caught. That it doesn't really matter to you because this code is more important.
Much so. Definitely.
Living by this code, maintaining street credibility, that's more important.
Definitely.
So definitely want to stop there and give us a moment to chat about that. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Was Cameron wrong for that interview?
I don't feel like he was wrong. I feel like he was voicing his experience where he comes from. I feel like I could hear it in the interviewer's voice. I don't know. It kind of seemed, I don't know. He seemed kind of judgmental, like this is important to you, like this is. But that's from where he's standing, and he said it in the beginning. He's very clear about it. From a business standpoint, this is how he thinks. And if I'm a business mindset versus a consumer mindset is not going to be the same thing. And so I think he was just speaking from where he's at and where he's standing in business. And other people may feel like that's wrong, but there's a lot of business practices that people have and they feel like it's wrong. And so I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I just think that he's speaking from where he comes from, his experience and his business standpoint, his viewpoint. So, yeah.
See, I didn't think it was that much of a business thing. Like, I thought he was saying, like, it's more code of ethics. It's like how I live my life. And yeah, it impacts there is a business aspect to it just because I operate how I operate kind of thing. But it didn't feel like it was specifically geared toward maintaining good business or anything like that. It just feels like that's how he lives his life and that's what he believes.
All right, Scribe, I see your hand.
So I think in the world that he's in, when you're in the streets, you don't really have an option. It's not just about you. It's about your family. Like there's a whole lot that gets put on the line that I don't think everybody's privy to. But I mean, your kids, all that. It doesn't just impact you if you snitch. It impacts everybody if you mess up the game. So if you're in it, then it's a rule. If you're not in it, not so much a rule, but there's still risks involved.
All right. And K-12, I saw you said there's a bunch of moving pieces. Would you care to kind of elaborate on that? What are the moving pieces that you see?
I mean, it's just a lot of things to consider. Like, when you take on certain responsibilities, you're not just taking them on for you. You're taking them on for a whole lot of people. You can't just do whatever.
Okay, I can dig that. I think what I ended up being a bit moved by, and I had a question about that idea. He said, those people aren't my audience. My audience wouldn't feel that way. and were I to be someone to report to the police, then maybe my audience wouldn't think that way, and that maybe I would lose my money. Do we see that as a valid reason?
Yeah, for the image that he put forth, yeah.
Okay. Dig it. And my role here, my goal here today is less about, as generally, my goal is less about this is what I believe, and as such, I want to share with you what I believe, and more about I'd love to see where the thoughts are going. So I wanted to explore some of the other implications behind the no snitch ideology, philosophy, and why it finds itself so prevalent in not only hip hop culture, but American society, because as hip hop is indeed a reflection of what's going on and what has gone on in American society, I think it's very valid to look at the merging of those two rather than looking at them as two disparate ideologies. So this one pulled something from PBS, just looking through some of the historical enslaved rebellions. And this comes from the New York City conspiracy of 1741. And all of the other information is there about the revolt itself. But what I found to be most interesting was this particular passage that says a 16-year-old Irish indentured servant under arrest for theft claimed knowledge of a plot by the city slaves in league with a few whites to kill white men, seize white women, and incinerate the city. In the investigation that followed, 30 black men, 2 white men, and 2 white women were executed. 70 people of African descent were exiled to far-flung places like Newfoundland, Madeira, Saint Dominique, and Curacao. Before the end of the summer of 1741, 17 blacks would be hanged and 13 more sent to the stake, becoming ghastly illuminations of white fears ignited by the institution of slavery they so zealously defended. And so I would counter those who may have an issue with Mr. Giles and his Stop Snitching campaign, that maybe historically in America, there might be reasons by which one would not snitch. And so I decided not to pull up all of the other rebellions in history, the Nat Turners and things of that nature. But what struck me, even in that research, is the amount of rebellions that happened, the amount of rebellions that were under reported, but also of the rebellions that were thwarted, the high propensity and probability that individuals with knowledge of those rebellions, either before or after, became the linchpin. Now, if we're talking about America during the antebellum period, if we're talking about the institution of slavery, it's not that it required so much of an absolutely pure witness in order to enrage a mob and bring about lynching and other forms of devilment. But I guess one could also question, but that definitely helped. And so my thought process, even beginning this conversation, is that maybe this idea of stop snitching has roots that are way deeper than hip hop, that are way deeper than the urban sprawls to which the descendants of those enslaved individuals were housed and redlined into. And then maybe unto itself that there is a degree of self-preservation in not giving information to individuals who wouldn't do anything great with that anyway. And I'm not sure that there'd be a value. I'm not sure there'd be any bartering that would go on with an enslaved individual being able to give information that they knew. Quite possibly, they may find themselves subject to the same punishment, the same fury, the same vitriol as the individuals who be planning those coups might be subject. So that gives me just something to ponder, whether or not we're looking at a foundational reason for not being down with the idea of snitching. So if that is the case, then just kind of looking at that one of the possible histories of it, I think another thing to consider is these particular 5 reasons why many attorneys would suggest and absolutely tell their clients to not speak with the police. And the first being the Miranda rights that we looked at, I believe, in our very first session together. The fact that if the Miranda rights and the Miranda codes as they are written are being followed, then any individual under investigation or in communication with an officer of the law has the right to remain silent. Now, with rights, there's also the other side of rights, which is responsibility. And if one has the right to remain silent, then one also has the responsibility to not remain, their responsibility to remain silent, particularly if we look at that 4th point, recognizing that anything that you say can be used against you. So essentially, even in the Miranda codes that are supposed to be followed by law enforcement, there is a reason, a reasonable suggestion and urging almost to keep your mouth shut because anything that you say may be used against you. Then, of course, that second point that you have the right to an attorney. And attorneys talking to the police are much like I tell my students, or like their parents talking to teachers and administration. Someone is an advocate for you, and it is their job to advocate in that particular environment. And you don't necessarily have the tools for that environment. You don't know any of the loopholes. You don't know any of the traps that may be set. So then there again, that is again wrapped up in our Miranda rights, the Miranda code, that right to an attorney. I think that number 3 point, however, is one of the heaviest and hardest things that I've had to process in life and in researching for this course, and just in generally researching on how to survive, not in South Central, but in Atlanta, but how to survive. And the fact is that the police are allowed to lie to you, but you aren't allowed to lie to them. And so if we think about some movies we've seen, or if we think about the first 48, or quite possibly some may be able to go back to history themselves and the interrogation room, where it has been said that there is this amount of evidence pointing towards you, or that there is this witness that says that they have you on the scene. All of these tactics to try to elicit a confession or to try to convince you to have a memory of a situation that you did or did not have. But the reality being that the police have the opportunity and the ability, the right, in fact, under their job to lie to you, but you don't have the right to lie to them. So once again, where is the valid reason for having a conversation with the police? You know, I laugh at Cameron's video when he says he'd speak to the police just to say hi, how you doing? I'm not sure if I would agree with that either. If it can be avoided, it should probably be avoided. And then I think number 5 hits home on a variety of levels. Now, we've seen this, whether it be in movies, whether it be in the various court shows that for whatever reason are always over television and never go out of style. If it's not Law and Order, then it's Boston Legal, or it's this, or it's that, or it's that. But this idea that cooperating would allow the officer to speak on your behalf, to make a deal for you. And that's just simply not their power, not their ability. When we look at, you know, the three chambers of government, the idea of checks and balances and power, and just the distribution of labor and rights and responsibilities. Police officers are not prosecutors. They're not attorneys. They do not have the option to levy charges against you. They don't have the option to make a deal for you. They arrest, as it's been said, as they suggest, they provide whatever evidence and information that they have, but there are attorneys who make those deals. There are attorneys who decide upon whatever metric and rubric they're using for those charges. So if we look at those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, it would look as though from a very sensible and a very logical and a legal standpoint that there isn't any great value in speaking to the police, which once again kind of upholds this idea of no snitching. And I think probably, and I think a few of you referenced that earlier when we were chatting about Cameron, the idea that there are other things at play other than yourselves. And I think Biggie said it so incredibly well. Number 9 should have been number 1 to me. If you ain't getting bad, stay the fuck from police. If niggas think you snitching, they ain't trying to listen. They be sitting in your kitchen, waiting to start hitting. And I want to pause to share on that for just a moment and really sit into that and maybe pick your brains for just a moment as well. That idea that those who are charged to protect and serve, as it says on the car, don't have the ability, or rather the desire, if you will, to protect and serve an individual if they are in the community and perceived to have had a conversation with them. What is the value then of speaking to the police if the neighborhood possibly sees you as a snitch, possibly sees you as a rat, possibly sees you as a threat to their general society, to y'all way of living? Where is the benefit of even having a conversation with the police? What are y'all thoughts on that crack commandment number 9 from the Notorious B.I.G.? Any thoughts?
He was correct.
He was correct. I tend to agree with Brother Smalls. So the question then begs itself, if we have all reason to know that snitching is not beneficial, if we go to Cameron, if we look at the enslaved rebellions, if we look at the way by which the Panthers themselves were infiltrated, the MOVE organization was infiltrated, and so many other social movements were infiltrated, all the way down as of recently to the BLM movement and the Stop Cop City movement, which is going on here in Atlanta right now. If we have all of that information and all of that, then why does it happen still? And so I would suggest that one of the reasons that it does is because many of us were taught the code of not snitching by snitches. Many of us were taught the code of not snitching by snitches. So what you have before you is a quick description of Donnie Brasco. A former FBI agent tells how, posing as a jewel thief, Donnie Brasco, he lived as a mafia insider for over 6 years and informed the FBI of the mob's involvement in extortion, gambling, theft, bribery, drug trafficking, and murder. Now, to be clear, this is the plot for Donnie Brasco. It is also the story of Joseph D. Pistone. So the movie itself is based on the book by Joseph Pistone. So we watch mob movies and we believe in this thing of ours, or we hear of this thing of ours, and yet this even idea that we get of the mob, and the mob has been used so many times on so many records and so many names over and over again. Yet I ask you this, and kind of rhetorical, but if you are not Sicilian, as it were, and not a family member of the mafia, how would you have any information on the inner workings of the mafia, of the mob? You wouldn't. So the ironic thing is, although Stop Snitching was a campaign, and although no snitching has remained an incredible part of hip hop lyrics and culture and ideology for a great deal of time, so has a fascination with the mafia. And it's interesting how sometimes cautionary tales themselves aren't followed, aren't heeded, if you were. But so that's Donnie Brasco. That's one example. Can somebody give me another example, if you will, of us learning about no snitching from individuals who snitched? Anybody with me?
I'm with you. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was gonna see it. I see it in other movies. I saw Donnie Brasco, but I see it in other movies. I think there was is it Deep Cover
Okay.
with LL Cool J?
Okay. In Too Deep?
It was In Too Deep. Yeah, yeah, In Too Deep. Yeah.
Deep Cover was Lawrence Fishburne.
Okay, my bad. I'm getting my deeps messed up.
In Too Deep, in fact. And I haven't even done the background on In Too Deep to find its whether there's a historical connection. I'm gonna have to look at that myself. And before I move from Donnie Brasco, I have to say, and maybe it's because Al Pacino is just such an incredible actor, but man, did I feel bad for Lucky. It's like a two-time loser that could never make it, thought he came up on it, and he brought a rat into the organization. But here's another example. The story of Henry Hill. Henry Hill, who was the protagonist of Goodfellas, gave us such great movie magic. Do I amuse you? I'm a clown. I'm here to amuse you. Just absolutely amazing, amazing, amazing cinematography. And yet Henry Hill himself was a mobster who turned FBI informant. Now what's crazy about Henry Hill is that even after leaving witness protection, Henry Hill kind of lived a little bit of a popular life. A guest on Geraldo Rivero's show and Howard Stern's radio show, GoodfellaHenry.com, in which he sold memorabilia and dispensed practical advice on subjects like the best way to hide a corpse. And again, this is where we learn, the story of the mob, the ethics of the mob, and no snitching. And yet, in spite of that fact, snitching itself still runs rampant. So it's kind of hard to really reconcile the conflicts, those conflicting ideas that we have all reasons. We even have legal reasons and ramifications why one would not, but yet we still do. So I still suggest that part of it is because we were taught no snitching from snitches. And then, of course, the more modern and the more urban exploration of what snitching could possibly look like, which is Paid in Full. Story of Mitch and Alpo. Mitch Porter. Dame Dash got behind it. Jay-Z got behind it. You got Wood. You got great actors in it. I think they said Mekhi Phifer. Wood Harris. You got Cameron in there. You got Nori in there. Money Making Mitch. So you have this wonderful coming of age story of Ace leaving the dry cleaners, finding some work, ditching all of that, becoming a man, becoming the man, and the inevitable demise of things. And again, we're not supposed to be snitching, yet we're getting a lot of our information on the stop snitching culture from individuals who have themselves snitched. And I just find that to be quite interesting. So before I move forward, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, on those conflicting energies. How is it possible for stop snitching to be such a movement, for us to have such a reason, and for us to still have evidences, examples of that happening in the community?
They had to ban in Boston, they had to ban people from making Stop Snitching t-shirts, because that's all we was rocking for a big portion of our lives. But it's crime though. If you stop crime, then you'll stop snitching, because then what we snitching on?
All right.
But because it's systematically and it's already in our culture, then like my mom get quiet when we pass by police. Like it's already, yeah.
I see a hand, K-Rap.
Yeah, and I kind of forget what I was gonna say. Big Mike, what was the first thing you just said?
I was gonna say if we got rid of crime, we could get rid of snitching, because then what we snitching on?
Oh, no, okay, here's what I was gonna say is that the ability of police to lie to you and to make it seem like there's more advantages and everything like that, then that even if you know your rights, it's like you feel power. I think that's what it is. It's like you feel powerless. It's like the kind of thing that you see with like women in relationships. Sometimes it's like you think that if you give something up that you will get love, and you know that's not true, but like it still happens because there's still like that sort of instinct toward it, I guess.
So still moving under duress, attempting to free yourself from something and being willing to accept what you can accept as the best possible option there. Big Mike, I got a question for everybody, but it's based upon your question. You got me thinking, right? You said, and if we were to get rid of crime, then there'd be no need for snitching. How do we get rid of crime?
It'd be tough when it's systematically there. So I don't know. Yeah, y'all tell me. That's what I'm here for, to learn and take notes.
You gotta meet people's needs. That's why
Speak on it.
motherfuckers is doing crime. They trying to meet their needs. Just they basic, like rent. High as fuck right now. You know what I'm saying? Niggas just trying to take care of their kids, take care of their wife. Like that's why motherfuckers out here doing what they do. They trying to get it because they tried to get it the right way, and motherfuckers made it too high. So now niggas gonna get it by any means necessary.
And I think that points to a few different levels, right? And I think for me, that almost answers why we would continue to have snitching in the first place. let's just go historically for a few seconds. You know, the idea of redlining, individuals of African descent, but also our Puerto Rican, our Dominican, our Mexican, our native brethren and sistren were not exempt to this either. So you relegate people to these certain areas. And that unto itself is not enough, because that would suggest that, well, you just put violent people in a violent area and they became violent because they were violent and they were close to each other, right? But then you take into consideration the intentional lack of resources, the underfunding of it, the intentional defunding of very simple necessities. And then what is to come of that? And then what is to come of the psychological component that might lead an individual into this quote unquote crime? What is to be said about a future if you can't physically see to visualize the possibility thereof? Think there's a beautiful amount of privilege to be able to wake up in the morning and dream for better and aspire for better and to want more. But I think even in that, we discount the large majority of Americans and quite possibly of the world population that don't have that imagery, that don't have that inspiration at their front door. And so where does one turn if it looks like there's nowhere to turn in the first place? Big Mike, I see your hand again.
Yeah, I had maybe a question for a solution. It's just changing the definition of what a crime is. Because a lot of times the people that are doing these quote unquote crimes don't see themselves doing as things that are wrong per se. It's just things that, like K-12 said, that you're doing for survival. And a lot of these people that are saying what's a crime, there's a lot of things that should have been legal, that was legal, that we was out doing in the middle of large crowds and celebrating and taking pictures in front of, and it was all the legal way to do things. And then 200 years later, it's like, we shouldn't have been lynching people in groups and doing all. But according to them, that was the law, and you had people that was upholding the law, which then you get the police. So now if that is already ingrained in everything that we doing, how am I ever supposed to like the police?
Incredibly valid point. Incredibly valid point. I think that's why I wanted to pause from the lecturing, because I wanted to chat with us. I wanted these kind of thoughts in there. I've been thinking some of these things, but I like this meeting of the mind. Mood swings, I see your hand.
Yes, I'm just trying. Okay, so your original question, can you remind me again? Because I just want to make sure I'm on my thoughts.
I think what I asked is, how do we reconcile the contradiction between being a no snitching society / community and yet it being so prevalent?
Okay, because I heard Big Mike saying don't commit crime, but is it that they really want to reconcile it? Because if you think about it, if you reconcile it, how they make money, billions of dollars off of people being in jail. So why would they reconcile it? It's basically set up so it can continue to happen, because if it doesn't, all of their businesses are going to fail. You need people in jail to make money. You need crime to happen, to the hospitals to be full to make money. They make money off us being sick. They make money off us killing each other. They make money off of us all of those ways. So why would they reconcile it? It's not meant for them to do it. Even with the snitching, they tell these people, oh, we're going to pay you if you come forward. And these people, they got family to feed, and some of them are hurt. They like, we coming forward. We need that money. Somebody's go say something so we can get them dollars. So it's honestly no way around it, because they have it set up that way so it can continue to happen, so they can continue to get rich while we're here. Because if we're struggling, we're starving, we are going to drastic measures to make it, and we're not going to their neighborhoods because we really, really know we can get caught. We're going to the people in our neighborhoods and doing it to them. I'm just saying, I don't think they're trying to.
That was the most humble I'm just saying after having said a whole lot. Right on.
Thank you.
that led me to a thought that I had earlier this week or last week while driving, and it was about the color of crime. And this isn't a race color of crime. This is a poetic color of crime, but the color of crime and the idea of a white collar and or a blue collar crime. And I was struck by the idea that a murderer, someone who is convicted of murder, someone who is accused of being a murderer, and they get 25 to life, they get multiple life sentences, and it would seem as though it is justice served. If we can determine that that was the actual perpetrator and that person perpetrated that murder on that victim, it is an opportunity where the justice system itself did what it was supposed to do. Derek Chauvin having to do time for George Floyd is an opportunity for the system to do what it was supposed to do. But it led me to think about what is a life versus lives. And meaning to say, we may put the face of one named murdered individual, one victim, two victims, three victims, and of course, bless the dead. There's no minimizing anyone's existence. But with that same tenacity for justice, we find ourselves with individuals in power, whether at the head of corporations or the head of seats of Congress or all of these other political aspirations and offices whose policies themselves, I don't want to say Agent Orange, but yeah, whose policies themselves may have directly led to the annihilation of others, the casualties of war of others. And so I think that kind of melds both, actually the points that I've heard from everybody here, which is the idea of how crime is defined and how we're looking at crime. Because the reality is one life absolutely matters. And if one life matters, then 1,000 lives matter. And then 100,000 lives matter. And where is our vitriol? Where is our energy towards those who are in positions, particularly in corporate positions, to pillage other countries and even pillage parts of the United States? And we're not even going to talk about J. Edgar Hoover, but yes, to pillage these lives. And then I take it even further and question, and shouldn't the same be said of prosecutors sending individuals away for crimes that they haven't committed, for witness tampering, for evidence tampering, for the judges who actually got paid to send teenage victims to prison and got kickbacks into it? I think one of the things that we do have to look at is, what do we consider crime? Which then also begs the question, so then do we redefine what snitching is? Because essentially, wouldn't a whistleblower be a snitch? But isn't there a value and validity in using that information and that proximity to the crime to bring down those who were the purveyors of that crime? I just wanted to chat with us for a moment, wanted to get our thoughts. I wanted to jump in, pardon me 1 second. I wanted to jump back into the slides. I had a couple of more things that I wanted us to look at really quickly, because I had one other question for y'all. Does it even matter anymore? Does the no snitching code matter anymore? Are the streets upholding it?
What you mean?
I'm saying, is it being upheld? Does it matter? Does it actually have the importance that we're giving to it in this discussion right now? Not in theory, but in practice. Does it matter?
Hell no, I don't. Nah,
Why
I'm keeping
so?
it all the way funky. Hell no. Man, look, man, anytime you got real motherfuckers like Nipsey getting murdered by a sucker ass nigga, come on, bro. It is not being held. Like, it's a lot of fuck shit happening, just to keep it real. that never could go down. You know, it's certain shit that happened when I was coming up. A lot of shit that they let happen now, man. Look, if a OG on my block heard about you about to go pick up a gun and bring it to a fight, man, they gonna whoop your ass. It was epic. You know what I'm saying? When I came up, you couldn't just do whatever the fuck you want to do. Even as whatever you call yourself, you know, in the street, you couldn't do whatever you want to do.
See, because
And now that's what people doing.
but see, that was a different type of level of snitching, because back in the day, you would snitch to your people in those gangs to keep your people in line. And it wasn't snitching to get them in trouble with the police. You snitching to your people to keep your people in line, so stuff like that's not happening. Nowadays, people are snitching to the police and to like just like to the police and different people to get out of trouble, to get lesser time, to get paid. So it's not the same how it was back in the days.
And I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that. I'm not going to completely challenge that notion, because I'm curious as to whether or not we're seeing something new or whether we're seeing something different. I'm not sure. I see you right now, Big Mike, before I move forward. What were you about to say?
No, I was just gonna say, where I'm at, where I'm from, and these type of times and situations that people be in, like it's cool. Snitch 9 could come and put a whole blanket over it, just like they got history books that saying that we came here as indentured servants, or we came here because we wanted to come here, or whatever they saying in Texas and in Florida right now. But snitching, where I'm at, where we at outside, is very, like, it's still a thing that shouldn't be done, because there are real life consequences that can still happen, and there is people that are suffering from those consequences to this day. So, like, I don't want things to get gentrified so much that people is like, nah, you can snitch on your blah, blah. Nah, like snitching is still a nah. That it's a nah.
Gentrified snitching?
Yeah, they'll make it real sweet for people, and then people will get bagged and start to think that you could go into these prison buildings and doing all these things based on what people that's never experienced that is telling you what's cool and what's not cool, what you can do and not. But in these streets, and if you still involved in street activities, like if there's papers on you, there's repercussions for that. Like, they can make it seem cool on TV and in music, but in real life, there's still people that's dealing with real life consequences because of that.
Say word. James, I see your hand.
Yeah, just to piggyback, like even off of what Big Mike was just saying, I think now today with the power of like social media, a lot of people kind of snitch on themselves, or you know what I mean, that don't even realize that they're snitching on what they're doing, because now it's about putting on a show. And like so many people try to do something just like extra for the sake of like, you know, likes and clicks, and like don't even realize they could be dead ass telling on like any and everybody, and like it's crazy. It's definitely a different time.
Yeah, I'm definitely always perplexed when I see somebody hitting the jug, hitting the lick in other areas, but down here it's still hitting the jug, and it's recorded. Like, but isn't that antithetical to hitting a jug? A jug is supposed to be secretive. And I do think that brings up another reality, which is the value of clout and whether or not that overtakes the ethics that Cameron spoke of earlier. But I wanted to, where did my pictures go? There we go. Because we spoke on it, right? And he begs the question as to whether or not the individuals and pardon me, pause. Here is my disclaimer. I am not a proponent of violence. I believe in life and liberty for everyone. I am not encouraging by any means, by any suggestion, that anything should be done. What I am doing is looking at the rhetoric, looking at the theory, and looking at the contradiction between the theory and the things that happened thereafter. Because when we heard as a collective that Tekashi 6ix9ine was going to take the stand and was going to point that way to Treyway. Not only did we not believe in his safety whenever he were to be released, we did not know that he would still be able to make music, be able to move like a celebrity, and remain generally unscathed. And so I think one of the contradictions that it continues to bring me back to is how much of that is really being lived. Because where we go? Did I miss my other one? Pardon me as I do this. Supposed to already be there. Thank you. Because, I was watching the various podcasts around the internet, and apparently Gunna has an album that people are loving. Apparently Gunna has put on a show that people have been loving, selling out crowds. And many, just a few months ago, dubbed Gunna as a snitch. Many a few months ago, even those in the industry said that they would not work with him. They would not take any amount of money for a feature with Gunna. And yet, once again, comes out physically unharmed. God bless, because we always want physical unharming. We want everybody good. But his reputation seems to not be tarnished. His reputation seems to be, his star seems to be shining brighter than it's ever shined before. And all of this is after what one would say was a very public telling on someone else. And so the question for me remains as to, although hip hop itself has its roots in the streets, has its connections to the streets, and is said to be sworn to abide by those politics of the streets, one questions as to whether or not that is happening, or to what degree it has been happening before. Because Henry Hill didn't become a good fella this year, nor did Donnie Brasco this year. And so there is a history, there is a long line of that. And it kind of leads me to my final point of the evening, pardon me, which is a 360 movement. We started with Cameron, who said he would not speak on his injuries and being shot because that would be snitching. But then we've also talked about how individuals may get on record, may get on film, and dry snitch on themselves. And although we haven't spent a whole lot of time deep just into hip hop today and more into criminology today to round it out in our exploration in hip hop. And I think we've looked at this question a bit before, but just to bring that back, then how does one create street relatable music? How does one create songs that are indicative of the life that they've lived, or that pays homage to the individuals that have meant something to them, and not be an idiot snitching on themselves, or dry snitching on themselves, or snitching on others? And I am struck by this line by Sean Corey Carter, aka Jay-Z, aka Mr. Beyonce, aka Blue Ivy's dad, because he's a lot more of those things than he's been whole for a while. But he said niggas throwing rock signs outside your coop. Now, on that line, that song, which happened after the alleged incident with Cameron, that line does not reference Cameron specifically, does not mention his name, but has a vague connection to the events that were reported to have happened with Cameron. And so maybe if we take this conversation and we bring it into lyrics, the lesson that we take away from ourselves is the idea of plausible deniability. This is a statement that could be treated as art and analyzed on its artistic merit, and not considered an admission of guilt under any circumstances. But I will say that it blurs the line rather closely. But I think that's our lesson to take away from it, because we aren't ever going to disconnect that inextricable chain between hip hop and the streets. It is born of the struggle. It is born of the gutter, as it should be, as great art always is. But most great art is perceived to come from the higher class. It is meant to be high society. So visual arts is high society. It is not meant to be any indication of criminal activity. Movies are high society in some ways. They are not meant to be perceived as autobiographical, but in a culture that values the realness of our MCs, of the stories, of their personas, there comes a very interesting space between reality and art. And I think it is incumbent upon us to mine that gap wisely. And one of the ways that we mine that gap wisely is by plausible deniability. Maybe everything doesn't have to be a true story. Maybe it could be like Nas dropped on Magic 3, which is an amazing album, based on a true story, part 1 and or part 2. But again, if there were a need, and if there weren't a need for the Stop Snitching movement, I think we have reasons and understanding now, but the greater goal is to not be snitches upon ourselves. That's my word of the day. That's my sermon. In the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about the war in Vietnam. K-Rap, I see your hand in the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, that people are saying, you know, that there's plausible deniability, like this isn't my real life, this is a story, and that kind of thing. But lyrics are still used against rappers like all the time in trials and stuff, but they're not in other genres. Like, you know, like nobody accused Johnny Cash of being a murderer, and though he said, like, you know, I shot him in and watch him die. Like, it's that same like inherent sort of racism and classism and just trying to keep the people down.
I concur wholeheartedly. And I think, you know, I think one of the things we would love in life is to have an answer. I'm a bigger fan of the question. Sometimes these things aren't to be answered. Sometimes these things aren't necessarily to be fixed, or maybe they aren't able to be fixed as we see it right now, but the awareness of it and moving with that awareness of it becomes even more important. I thought I saw a hand, Big Mike.
Nah. Just to tell you, these classes are always fire.
I received that. I definitely received that. I try to put real thought into what we're discussing. And as I said to you all at our very first class, even in my introductory class, hip hop gave me my voice a long time ago. It gave me self-esteem a long time ago. And in my 12th grade year, when I was studying all of the poets for this British literature class, and I started looking at the wits and the transcendental poets, and I really started thinking of the people that I was listening to, like, oh, this person would be this person would be that. And something struck in me way before hip hop was said to be deserving of academia, that I was going to continue to uphold it that way. So as I approach the connection between criminology and hip hop, as I approach the culture, as I approach the ideology, as I approach all of these things that affect us, it is imperative that it's given that same academic treatment, that same evidential exploration, but more than anything, that it doesn't come off as a, I don't know, computer engineer talking to you about binary codes and expecting for it to be engaging. It requires a bit more. Our culture is a bit more engaging. And I have found so much wit in some of the simplest lines and in some of the most complex lines that come out of hip hop. And there is still a verse here or a snippet here or a song there that'll be on my wall or in my head. And that's what I'll be walking to. Yeah, I'd be like water because Bruce Lee told me that. And Confucius gave me great things. There are things from the Bible. There are things from the Quran. There are so many other ways by which you can have mantras and affirmations to move forward in life. But then there are also times when Young Jesus is a motivational speaker. And when Nas gets 100% in his griot bag. And when Big Crit brings all of that country together, that country with hip hop. And, when, our aforementioned from last week, when Remy is going to go all of the way there, when Lauren is going to take us into the ether. And so being here with y'all is always a reminder of the value of hip hop, of the precious merchandise that we are privileged to be a part of, and the fact that I'm going to keep fighting that fight. Dean, I think we're good.
Yo.
I mean, to interrupt dinner.
Nah, you good. Humans are weird, B. Incredible class. I was sitting here checking it out. Always a pleasure to have you here. Learned a lot about my man. Kill it. You heard, B. We will be back next month. You want to let them know what you'll be teaching next month, brother?
Let me check myself real quick. I got my slide up. I didn't even think about doing that, but let me check my slide up. Where are we at next month? Yep. Pardon me 1 second as I move through real quick. Next month. I love it. I'm gonna have fun with this one. Next month is entitled We Outside, the struggle for inclusion within the industry and institutions.
Wow. Okay. So
we outside, that outside.
Should be lit. You guys enjoy yourselves this evening. Thank you, Professor Mario Jackson, for pulling up. If you can,
thank you.
Give my man a good salutation. Long live lyricism. God bless. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Pendulum Songwriting.